Hello and welcome to another How to Code Well Coffee and Code live stream. Today we've got quite a lot to do, so we're going to just dive straight in. What I want to achieve today is building a very basic database-driven website for the Docker in Motion course that I've done. Now, let's just take a look at the course itself, and I'll give you some information on what it is that I wish to achieve today. So the Docker in Motion course, as I've mentioned in the previous live stream, is about it's a course about building Docker and Docker files, creating containers. It's quite a thorough course, and I'm currently working on the latter end of the units, as well as some edits for the first couple of units. The first two are already released. So we have an introduction to Docker here, as well as the Docker images here. So the Docker images, we talk about images versus containers and how to pull images and what is an image layer and all that stuff. I've actually done enough recording to get past this point here. So we've actually, from a recordings perspective, we've got containers, we've got a web server running, and so forth. And I've been script writing the last three, so how to building a database container and how to store data, as well as Docker Compose. Now, what I need to do is I need to actually build a very basic website that allows you to be a demonstration piece, if you will, of creating a database and a web server container. Link the two together. The website will be a data entry screen where you can enter some information, or it lists some information. Haven't quite decided yet. And then it'll probably do both, to be honest. And I'll go through tearing down the Docker containers and data storage, which kind of leads nicely onto how to store data. So, the storage options, how to make bind mounts, how to create Docker volumes, copying files, and so forth. The easiest solution I could think of was incrementing a counter. So you would have a counter you would have like a database table, say counter, and you would have just a single row, a single field in there of count, and then that would increment each time you refresh the page. Thing is, that's extremely boring. That's extremely boring, but that would demonstrate the fact that removing a container, actually deleting the container, would also delete the data from that, unless you've actually stored it properly using Docker volumes and so forth, which I'll be talking about in the course. But I thought, we're all web developers here, so let's do something a little bit more beneficial. So we've actually got a very basic website at the moment in the web server container. So let's do something with that. Let's actually build a simple data entry thing where you've got a list of people, and a person has a first name, a last name, a bio, a description, and an age, and you can fill out a form, and then that gets saved, and so forth. So I don't think I'm going to cover the whole thing today. I'm probably going to split this up in a couple of bits. I actually need to start working on getting this in bits and pieces installed. So let's get to it. Bear with me a moment. Okay, so the course, the actual code for the course is in GitHub. So manning-docker-in Docker in Motion, and you can see that if I go to the browser again. Here we go. So we're on branch and tag 1.5 at the moment. I'm going to be doing this in another branch, which I've just created, in fact, which is I haven't actually pushed it up, but it's a new branch, a local branch that I will be pushing up once it's ready. So the branch is Unit 6 website -1. Just bear with me a mo. Just grab some coffee. Today's coffee, as it's coffee in code, is a chocolate cookie latte. Okay, so what we need to do is spin up a very basic database first. Now, I'm not going to do anything Docker-wise today. That's going to be in the course. I'm just going to build the basic website. So the actual database is something that I'm going to build on my local machine here, which is an iMac. So let's go into the terminal window. Now, I actually don't have anything. I don't actually have MySQL installed because I do everything via Docker. So I need to have a sort of a native thing. So I actually need to install the database. So this is how granular we're going today. And I'll do that through Homebrew. So if we do brew install, I think it's just MySQL. And hopefully that'll run off and get the bits and pieces. So yeah, updating Homebrew, that's all good. This is where it all goes wrong, you see, and I get permission errors. So it looks like it's working. Yep, that's cool. So apparently I can connect to it MySQL uroot, although I think I need to do MySQL admin I read somewhere. Let's just clear that down. Let's just see. Do we have MySQL on the... Yeah, we do. -v, what have I got? Access denied. Okay, yeah, I know I do need to do MySQL admin. Okay, let's do help to see what it is I need to do. So, okay, so we can create a database in that. That's fine. Okay, let's just run that. See what that does. Okay, yeah, no, I do need to put in some. I think it's U for username and then P for password, I think. So when we're actually creating the bits, I think. Let me just double check. I'm pretty sure that is the case. Bear with me a mo. Let's just take a look. So it's Homebrew. Install MySQL, and I'm sure there is a part in here which is on. Let's bring that back to the browser. Yes. So we do MySQL admin. Here we go. Then U and then the root. Fine. That's perfectly fine. Go back to the terminal here. Okay, clear you down. So it is MySQL admin. Fine. -u. I'm just going to do yeah. Let's just do root. I'll change all of this when I actually push this up. So -u root and then the password. Apparently it's just that, and I'm just going to do test for now, like so. Or not. Your password -u. Do I do minus password equals test? Nope. Open up terminal, execute the following command. I'm just going to copy that, to be honest. And yeah, MySQL admin -u. Oh, apparently it's that's a bit weird. Apparently I can't do that. Open up terminal, execute the following. So do I have MySQL? It is on there, although it's saying it's denied for localhost. Can I do... Okay, so we've got that. Binding the address, that's fine. Why can't I get access to this? MySQL connector server at localhost has failed. Using password no. That doesn't look right to me. Surely we need to do that. Password is equal to test unknown password. Anyway, MySQL -u root, I think one might be set up. Let's just try -p, because I have been working with this before. Yes, there we go. Phew. Oh, yeah. That could have all gone wrong. All right. Okay. So I don't think show databases. Okay. So we do have a database here, Docker in motion. So I was playing with this before. What I'm going to do is just remove that. So because I don't, let's just have a look. Use Docker in motion. What have we got with this? So let's do a show tables. So I was playing around with this the other week as just something to play with. Okay, so select all from person, and do let me know if the sound quality is rubbish on this, because I have had some issues. In fact, OBS was crashing this morning. That's why I'm a little bit late, so I do apologize. And also, I had some problems with the damn coffee machine, so that's why I'm late. Okay, so we've got an ID, first name, last name, description, age. I might just use that. In fact, because that's going to save a lot of time. Okay, that's cool. So I'm going to use that. That's no problem. Right. So let's go back to the actual code. Let's actually start building something, shall we? Right. So we've got in here. It's just a branch of. I think it's developed this this code. This branch. And in here, we've just got the basic bits and pieces that I talk about in the actual course, the Docker Emotion course. So we're actually adding a virtual host entry file using the Docker file that I've got here. And then the site is just a very basic site. In fact, it's so basic that it just throws up a PHP info to actually show and prove that you've got PHP installed on this Docker machine. On this Docker container. So what I want to do is replace this with some proper bits and pieces to actually access this database. What I'm going to do, though, I've just noticed on the actual output of this on OBS that it's very tiny. So let me just see if I can make this a little bit bigger. Bear with me a minute. Edit. This is where it all goes horribly wrong. I try and improve it, and then it goes wrong. Let's just bring up appearances, and it is, scroll down here. Yep, font size, change that. Oh, that's in presentation mode. Override that, put it to 18, apply. Okay. And okay, I tell you what I'm going to do is I'll probably just leave it as is. But if you want me to make it bigger, then can I? Yeah, I'll probably, let me just, sorry everyone. I should have done this beforehand. Okay, yep. Before it breaks, I'll just leave it like that. But you're going to have to just bear with me a minute. I'll tell you what I'll do. In fact, I'm going to sort out the file directory in here. And then what I'll probably do, because I think what I'll end up doing is just writing a single file first, full of all the stuff, and then I'll break it out into this sort of directory structure. So what I might do is, let's just create a new file in here. And we're just going to call this database. And okay, so it's not, I'll change all of this when I'm ready to change all of this. So I can now probably do presentation mode, right? So yeah, that's a little bit better, isn't it? That's a little bit better. You can see that now. Let's just bring the actual screen size down a wee bit, otherwise it's just going to be like 6 lines of code. So view, exit presentation mode, and I want to do just knock that down to about 24. Okay. Okay, that'll do. That'll do. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is create some constants, which basically the configuration, if you will. So we're going to have const, and we're just going to use the database db underscore username, and I'm just going to set that to an empty string, as well as a const of db password, and also a const of db name, right? So it's just going to be those constants. Fine. Okay, so we can fill that out. So username here is going to be the username of the user, obviously. Root. The database password I set to test, and the name I believe is docker underscore in underscore motion. We should probably also have another one, which is the host itself, which is db. I'm just going to do db host, which is local host, like that. Okay, so I'm going to basically fire through all of this stuff. I have just noticed that with the this presentation mode on, I can't actually see the chat because it fills up my whole screen. So I'll dive in and out as quick as I can. So we've got these bunch of configuration. Now what I will do eventually is put this all in its own config file, if you will. One thing I'm going to say is I'm not going to use any framework. Okay, I'm not going to use any framework at all. The reason being is that people who are learning Docker through the course Docker in Motion, they don't necessarily care about a particular framework. I don't want to force them down any path, you know. Yes, I'm using PHP, but that's all I'm going to be using. I'm not going to be using Symfony or Laravel. Now, I know that I could probably spin this up insanely quick, you know, with one of those things. But to be honest, I'm only going to create a very basic website. And I have said a lot in all of my web chats that you just, you know, think about what it is that you want to achieve, and using a framework like a sledgehammer cracking a nut, right? You know, use the tool that will benefit what you're doing in the most efficient and effective way. And if you're downloading a framework that has thousands and thousands of lines of code and all you're doing is just setting up a database, then in my opinion, that's not the best way of actually approaching that task. The specification here is extremely finite. It is literally display something that will be stored in a database and demonstrate that without the necessary Docker volumes and stuff in place, that the data becomes lost. So it is just going to be, I'm just going to be using MySQL and PHP in this. So if you thought that this was going to be a chat on something that is a Symfony or Laravel based, then I'm sorry, but I will probably be looking at that in future tutorials on the Tuesday show of the How to Code Well channel. But today we're just going to focus on PHP. So anyway, let's crack on. I'm going to grab some more coffee before this goes cold. So this is fantastic coffee. We got the little the little syrups that you can get from I think it was Costa, and yeah, amazing stuff. I'm not sponsored by Costa, by the way. just putting it out there. Right, so let's continue with this. So I'm just going to create some functions. Okay, so I'm not even going to do this in an object-orientated way. I'll be using MySQL OOP. Sure, the objects off of that, but for what I'm doing, I don't think there's a need for that. So function, I'm just going to do connect, or let's just do db connect, like that. And that's going to take a bunch of bits and pieces and then return a database instance. DB, if there is one. So I'll just comment that out for now. And then what I also want to do a function called db insert, which is going to insert db. Let's do db. All right, let's just do it like that. My brain is going a million miles a minute at the moment, and I want to get on with the stuff that I was thinking about doing this morning. So, but I need to break this down. So db connect, db insert, db function, db. We're going to do db find all, right? So very, very basic stuff, and they're all going to return. Well, the insert we're going to pass in the db, and the db find all we're going to pass in the db too. So we need to make a connection, right, to get the db, which is going to be a MySQL connection, and then from there we can do db. We can do insert and find all, pretty basic stuff really. So the first thing I guess we need to do is do db equals db connect, and we're going to pass in some bits and pieces. So here we've got we've got db. Now the reason why I'm doing this is because I do predict that I'm going to be putting these in separate files. So db username, db name, db host. Marvelous. Okay, so we're going to pass in these constants in here. So db. So you can imagine these constants being like somewhere else. It doesn't even need to be constants, to be honest. It could be it could be off of a file somewhere. It could be an array of stuff like you do in what's that thing? Cake PHP and all of that stuff. In Symfony you use YAML, but I'm not using any of that. I mean, there's no point for what I'm trying to achieve here. So db username, db password, it's all about understanding what it is that you're trying to achieve and trying to do it in the minimal way, which is going to be the most beneficial way. It's all compromises at the end of the day. And we're also going to pass in the host, which is, I keep thinking these are variables, but they're not. db host. Okay, so we're going to pass those into this db connection connect function here. So let's just do that. Connect to database, and we're going to return either we're going to throw an exception if the db cannot connect, or we're going to return the connection, which I think is okay for what I need to do. So in here where we've got the variable db, what am I doing? No, TB, it's not tuberculosis, it's DB, it's a database. What we need to do is actually connect to it. So again, we're going to do db is equal to a new instance of and it's not uppercase, MySQL and sorry, it's new instance, new MySQL like that. And we can pass in the host, the username, the password, and so forth, which is cool. Just so happens to be the other way around to what I've done. Oh well, never mind. So db host. The next one is username, which is db username, and the next one is, what is that? Password, db password, and I guess that would leave the next one to be the db name. Now we could also include the db port and the socket, but again, I don't think I need that. I might, I don't know. No, I'm going to leave that out for now. It's just going to use the default. I think it's 3306. So I'm just going to leave that out and just do that. So, okay, so we've got the DB. That should instantiate a new connection. And of course, we need to alter this. to put in that. So if we do if db connect error number, so if we've got one of those, then we throw a new exception, and we're just saying cannot connect to the database. Okay, and then we return an instance of DB. So at return is DB, oops, sorry. Come on, stupid fingers. MySQL I, and we also throw exception if can't type, cannot connect. All right, so that's pretty self-explanatory, I hope. So we've got the database connection in here. We're doing we're basically just instantiating MySQL I. If I was to click on that, here we go. So this is what it's doing. We're creating a new instance of DB, which opens a new connection to the MySQL server, passing in all of these bits and pieces. So that's what we've done. And you see the port here and the socket are optional. In fact, they're all optional. What you could do is just have a new instance of MySQL I without any parameters in here, and I think there is a connect somewhere. Here, connect, which you can connect, which basically does the same thing, right? Well, the MySQL instantiated object will pass in connect when will call connect if we've supplied anything in here. So anyway, that's that. Let's close that down. Can I? Oh, that's a bit dangerous. My computer has just locked up. Oh dear. Oh dearie me. Why? Bear with me a minute, guys. Sorry, this is very frustrating. I can't actually click anything in here. Damn it. What if I was to exit the presentation mode? Yeah, okay, so that worked. Click on that and then go back into enter presentation mode. Can I? Phew. I thought I lost everything. Panic. Okay, so we've connected to the database, or we've at least attempted to connect to the database, which is fine. And we can now pass in DB into these things here. So with insert, we'll find all and stuff. We're actually passing that in as the first argument. So let's just pass that in. So this is insert. We're going to insert a person, and we're going to find. Again, that's another object of MySQL I. So this is going to find all. Find all people. Just find all persons, whatever. Okay, cool. Let's save that. Okay, so that's cool. I guess before I move on any further, I should make sure that we actually have a connection, right? Because I don't want to get to a point where I've got some crazy error somewhere. Now, what we haven't done is we haven't actually got a web server for this. Well, we do in the sense of the Docker in Motion web server, but again, like I said, I'm not going to use that at the moment. But what I can do, go back into the old terminal here. Let's close. Well, no, we'll keep that open. Open that. And what shall we do? Where am I? First of all, where on earth am I? I'm in here. That's not where I need to be. So let's just go into, I've got it on a flash drive, so it's Manning, and it would be in okay, let me just take a little pew and see what's going on here. So this is in marvelous. Okay, clear that down. Okay, back into here. Bear with me a mo. Damn, that's good coffee. Okay, right. Git status, or let's just do git branch. Work out where I am. I am on there. Fantastic. Okay, clear that down. And do an ls. We're in code, and we're in sites. cd into my site, and we've got the database here. So I've just capped that. So that's what we've just created. Okay, cool. Let's go and spin up a web server. In fact, what I'm going to do just to make it even more easier is, just because I predict that this is going to break, is let's just do an ls. Well, I guess we can go /database.php. So, all right, let's do that. Fine. Sorry, thinking as I'm speaking. So the next thing is to spin up this web server, and I have mentioned in my previous web chats and previous tutorials that there is a way of spinning up an internal server for PHP, which we're going to use. So let's do that now. Let's do a PHP, and it is -s, capital S, and you put in the address of where the server should go, and then also the port. So in this case, we're just going to do 8,000, and because we're in the current working directory, it's going to treat that as the current working directory. So this here is the current working directory, or the document root, not the current working directory. That's terminology. The document root of the web server. So now, if I go into the browser again, and do a local host, if I can spell it. And do localhost port 8,000. Here we go. God, that's big. Let's bring that down. There we go. Okay, so this is now on localhost 8,000, port 8,000. That's pointing to the index page, but we actually want to point to the database page that we've got. But of course, there is actually nothing to display that. Also, display in there. Also, what I'll show you is in the terminal, we can actually see an output here. Can you see that? An output. So we've got a 200 OK, 200 OK here when we've connected to that, which is good. Okay, so let's continue. Let's go back to the code itself, and I want to do let's just do an if db is an instance of MySQL, then let's just do an echo of connected, right? So if it's going to fail, it's going to throw an exception. If it can't connect, it's going to throw this exception here. If it can connect, it's just going to, it's going to return an instance of DB, which is an instant. It's going to return an instance of MySQL. So here we're just doing a check here. If DB is an instance of MySQL, then echo connected. Okay, so let's give that a whirl. Go back into the browser, and it is /database.php, and there we go. It's connected. Woohoo! I should I should sound less surprised. Okay, so that's cool. So we're connected to the database, and for anyone who's just literally jumped on, I'll just run through that again. Let me go back to the old browse, blah, blah, blah. Where am I? Ah, dear. Here we go. So we've got just a recap run through, because I know this is like a billion and one tutorials in at one hit. I usually do like a very small tutorial each Tuesday on the How to Code Well YouTube channel. So I know that there's going to be a lot of stuff in here. So I'm just going to recap as I go. So I've got these constant values here, and I've just got a function dbConnect, which just instantiates a new instance of MySQL attempts to check if it's connected, and then returns the instance. If it can't connect, then it's going to throw this exception. And then here, all we're doing is in checking that we have an instance of MySQL and then echoing out connected. That is it. Now, for anyone who's literally just jumped on, I do know I will be splitting this up. I will be splitting this up into different things, but just for simple ease of use, I am just gonna do this on one file, as it were. Okay, so we're now connected. That's all good. We can start doing some bits and pieces, and we actually do have some data. If I go back into the terminal and I click on this tab here, we can actually see that we have some data. So I suppose the first thing I should do is fetch that information back. Now, this is fetching stuff from the person table. So I'm actually going to create sort of a very basic model model for a person. So we got ID, first name, last name, and description. And I just want to double check describe, because I did this a while back. Describe person. Whoops. Okay, so yeah, that's cool. Okay, so these cannot be null. First name and last name. That's first name and ID, fine. That is an auto-incremented ID, which is good, and it's the primary ID, so I obviously set that up before correctly. Last name, description are var, well, that's a text, that's a varchar, and the age is an int. Okay, I can work with that, that's fine. Let's just keep that open like this, and then go back into the code and start hacking up a model, shall we? So let's just make some room. And let's do class person, and we are going to just create a class that represents this database table. So we've got a private ID. We have a private first. That's not how you spell first name, is it? First name. A private last name, like so. I think was there a description, or was it a bio? Let me just double check. Go back into the terminal. What are we? We are description. Fine. Okay. That's no problem. So a description, like so. And there was also an age, right? So that was a private age. And in here, I'm just going to create some. So this is an int. This is what is that? That's going to be a string. This is going to be a string again. String, not string, string. I've got fat finger syndrome. And the age is also an int. Okay, now because I've defined these variables as comments, I can do with this PHP Storm IDE. I should be able to do. No, that's the wrong thing. Is it that? Yeah, here we go. So getters and setters, all the things. Fluent setters, go OK. Boom. Okay, so we've created this humongous class of person, and we've just got basically a very basic getter and setter thing, which is fine. So we've got set description. Everything returns this back. So I'll just scroll up to the top. We've got all of these properties here, and we've got these getters and setters. Okay, let's just grab some more coffee. This will probably make a little bit more sense when it's all and easier to read when it's all in a single file, or when it's all split up into individual files. But I'll do that when I look at refactoring it. So we've connected to the database. We've got the right at the bottom here. We have an instance of DB. We've got a class, a model called person, which is going to represent a record in that table. And we're going to do a find all. This is the next thing. So let's remove that. Let's do items is equal to db find all, and it requires a db instance. Now that's going to return. Here we go. That's going to return an array of objects. So what I want to do is do a query that queries the database to find all of these person records, and then create a new person model entity, if you will, and then set each one of these things to be that to be their values and so forth, and then return an array of person objects. That's basically what I wish to achieve. So not in here. So the first thing we need to do is actually write a query to actually query that. So we do SQL, which is just going to be like so, just going to be a string where we type select. And I tell you what I'll do. Before I do this, let's just save that. Let's just go into the old terminal. I prefer doing it on here, to be honest. Do it on the terminal. Let's do select all from person. That is literally what I'm going to be doing. So we're going to just copy that. And this is why I like working in the terminal, because you can actually just run commands very quickly without having to run any, language, PHP, Python, whatever. So I try and test these things out first using as raw as I can, so the terminal. And then I can just copy the thing that I've done, right? So this. And then I can just go into the tutorial here and just paste that in. So that is the code that we're going to issue. And just for argument's sake, I'm going to capitalize everything. Okay, now my IDE is probably going to complain that, let's have a look. Yeah, no data source is configured. I haven't configured anything in here. Don't worry about that. So DB, what we do need to do is now run a query. So query, passing in the string of SQL. So that's now going to, with the instance of this DB MySQL object that we've passed in here, we can now query that. So we can actually now go through the rows. So the results are going to be is equal to what I should do is query, because that returns a query. Just to explain what I'm talking about. What am I talking about? Here we go. So this returns a MySQL result. That's what I was trying to say. And it will. So for example, you can do for a successful select, right? Which you can then use and sort of loop through. So that's actually going to be an object that gets returned. Which is cool, and then we some other queries returns true or false and stuff on failure. But let's not. No, this is what I did before and it froze. Don't show again. So oh dear, bear with me a minute. Something has gone terribly wrong. I've lost the code. There we go. Live streaming, seat of your pants stuff. This. So let's get this back into presentation mode. Otherwise, it's just going to be scribbles on thing that you can't see. Right, so we've got query back, and what we can do with the query is we can do FetchASock, which is what we're going to do. Num rows, that's going to return the number of rows, which is cool. So we're just going to do a variable of num, which equals that. And I suppose right at the start, what I should do is just provide some defaults. Again, my mind is going a million miles at the moment, and I know what I'm going to achieve after this, or what I plan to achieve. So I'm just sort of setting myself up, but I probably shouldn't, because it's not explaining what I'm doing very well. So this is going to return num rows. The query itself, I'm going to be checking if the query actually returns anything. So this is going to be in an if block. That's why I've put this in here, because I obviously need to. There might be a case where the num just isn't defined, so that's why I've done that. Right, so we've got the query. So if query like that, so that's what I meant. And we've got FetchASock, so that's going to return an associative array. And what we can do, in fact, is yeah, so the first thing I'm going to need to do is check that we actually have it running, right? So we actually have a query. So it's we're going to return FetchASock. I'm going to just show you the you know, the MySQL, the PHP documentation, because it's probably far easier than just me rambling on. So this is what we're using, FetchASock, and it's pretty much the same as one of these sort of these examples. So you've got the new instance here. That's what I've done. You're checking for the that you've got connection. So in my case, I'm throwing an exception rather than, you know, printing that out. And then here you've got a result of MySQL query. So that's the query. That's the select stuff. So I've just called MySQL. And then you loop through. You do a while loop to get each row. And then what I'm going to do is instantiate the person object, and instantiate the person object for each one, and set each of their properties to be whatever is in per row. Yeah, so I probably haven't explained that very well either. Let's go back to the tutorial and actually start doing that. So let's go to here. So if query, if DB query, and then so that was a while. So that's row. While row, because that's going to loop through, and so we need to do if query like that, and there we go, like so. So if we've got a query, if that has returned some bits, then we get the num rows, then we do a fetch. And then here what we're going to do is instantiate the object, the person object, and then start mapping the setters, you know, the properties to the setters and so forth. So yeah, I mean, I guess what we could do is make this a little bit more verbose. So let's do result, because that probably sounds better than query. Result. And so what we could do is actually, I'm not a fan of this, but no, I'm going to keep it outside like that and just call that as result. There we go, because we might want to do something else with that. So Okay, we're also going to return an array, like I said, so of data, and that's going to have, it's going to be an associative array. That we're going to return. The first thing we're going to return is, in fact, yeah, the first thing we're going to do is return num rows. We're actually going to set that to be 0 to begin with, and then we're going to return results, which is itself an array of results. So you could think of this like pagination, if you will. So you could have num rows, you could have page number, and you could have like records per page and so forth. So in fact, we don't need that. And this we can just do data num rows is equal to u. Okay. So that's fine. And then we do person is equal to new person, because that's the object that we wish to do. And we can, because it's FetchASock, what we can do is just do person, just run all the setters. So set, we're going to do ID, so that's going to set the ID, which is row, and it literally is ID. In fact, what I'm going to do before I do this, let me just show you the output of this. So let's just comment that out. Let's just return, let's just do a var dump die, and just going to return the output of result, just to show you what it is that I'm working with, because I do appreciate I've just gone and said that this is an array with stuff in it rather than actually show you what stuff it is. So let's save that, and so that's going to do a find all. This might actually throw up a couple of errors too, which is it's all worth, the smaller the feedback loops, the better. So let's go back into the browser and just have a gander. Okay, here we go. Cool. Let's just bring that back a little bit. So that's actually the record. I should have shown you this before. I do apologize. I should have shown you this before. So that's actually the record in the database. So we have the ID, first name, last name, age, description, and so forth. So that is what is in here. Sorry, that is that record that we've returned. Sorry, I shouldn't have pressed that. That is the actual record that we've got. And what I'm doing is, instead of just returning that in its raw form, we are going to set that to a model, to an entity. So we can use the associative array, because it's FetchASock. This is associative array, where we've got the keys here of the field names and so forth. So we can map those. So that's what I'm going to achieve now. So let's go back to the tutorial, and let's go back to the code. So we've got row ID, and we don't need that because we've got fluent setters. Set, I'm going to do age, so that's row age. Set last name, which is row last name. I do apologize, guys. I don't know if you can hear, but my cat is trying to claw its way in. So if you hear any scratching on the door, it's because my cat wants to me to make a fuss of it, which I might in a minute name. Okay, so we've now got all of that. Also, we have the description too. So set description, which is also row. He's stopped now, so he's probably given up and gone to get some food. Descript. Okay, there we go. Okay, so we have this person. We've instantiated it. We've set that with all the bits and pieces. So what we can do again is here with the data, we can just do data. We'll do it under here. Data results is, a new result is equal to person. So literally what I'm doing is just adding, we're creating this object and we're just adding it to the results array. So let's remove that, and what I can do after this is just return data like that. All right, so that is basically it. And this, we need to just tidy this up. So return, this is going to be an array that returns. So this is going to be a array of results. So that's find all persons, find all person records, I should say, to make it sound a bit better. So in a nutshell, what we've done is we've created a new blank array with the, well, it's not a blank array, it's got these two keys, numRows and results. NumRows we set to 0, results we set to an empty array. Next thing we do is we create an SQL variable, which is just a string, which is literally select all from person, so that's the table person. We run that as a query, so this DB here is an instance of MySQL which we've got from the connection here. And then we're checking if we have an actual result. If we do, we then set the numRows index, which is that up here, to the numRows, so that should return 1. And then we loop through each one of these records. So, and when we do so, we do that in a fashion that is associative. So we fetch_ASOC. So that's going to fetch an associative array of each record, and we're going to equal the value of that of each record to a row. So each new record will be in this row variable. We then instantiate a new person class, and that person class is blank to begin with, and then we set all of the bits and pieces, all of the variables that we've got from this associative array. So these are field names, and we set their values to these setter methods. After that's done, after we've created the person class, we then add each person as a new index to results. So results, a new index, so that's going to be like 0 for the first one, 1 for the second one, 2 for the third one, and so forth, and it's going to be a result. So what I can do under here is just do a var dump again of items, and we're just going to kill that, okay, just because. So let's now refresh this page, and can we see now that we have this new fancy output? Okay, so instead of it just being the raw stuff from the database, this is actually now our object. We have results, which is 1, and we have all of this stuff, a person object. If there was another record in here, we would have another object. And that's what I'm going to be doing in a minute. We're going to be actually inserting stuff in here. So let's go back to the old code. Let's go back to sorry, I've said all that and I haven't even clicked the database, the browser. This is the output. Apologies. That is the output that we've got. This used to be the output of the raw output from the database. This is what we've got. So we've got numRows of 1, results, and that is an array of objects. If we had another record in the database, then we would have another object here. So that would be 0, then we would have 1 and 2 and so forth. The next thing that I'm going to do is insert some records. So let's click on the right button this time and go into back to here. I'm just going to grab a drink. Throat is getting a bit dry. So now we're going to populate the DB insert bit here. So again, it's kind of the same format. We need to have a select query. We need to have an insert query, but we still we have a variable SQL which will be like this, but with an insert query. And and we'll be putting that as a, running that as a query and so forth. So we actually need to supply a person to that. So let's scroll down here. We've done this, that's fine. We'll just comment that out for now. What I need to do, therefore, is instantiate a new person object. Now, I don't need to do this. I don't even need to have this model here, but I just think it's good to have something that encapsulates the data that you're passing to and from. Also, with these getters and setters, you can do clever things like, before they actually get set. So you could do filter and you can filter out values and so forth, which I might do in a minute. But yeah, let's just crack on with this DB insert. So the first thing I need to do is actually create myself a person. So person is equal to new person, and we're just for argument's sake, we'll do it down here just to do that. Okay, cool. So we do person, and like what we did before, we just do a lot of setting. All right, so I am literally going to just copy all of that and put that here. Okay, now this is outside of the scope of this function. It's not going to be affected by this at all. So that's why we've got the variable called person. It's perfectly fine. We don't need an ID because the ID is going to be auto added to the actual table, and that happens because of this. If we go back to the terminal, and if I scrolled up to here, that is auto incrementing. So the ID is auto incrementing. So we don't actually need to set it. We don't need to insert it. In fact, we probably shouldn't be doing that. We should just let MySQL deal with that. So that's cool. That's one less thing to worry about. And then obviously when we do when we insert the record, we then have to populate that with the latest ID. So what we need to do is just tidy this up, just create person like that, and we just need to put in some bits and pieces. So let's do test as the, oh no, that needs to be an integer. Let's do 34 as the age. Let's do last name as just test, and then the first name as I don't know, think of a name, Roger, and the description is going to be a web developer, right? Okay, so we've got this new instantiated, this new class, this new object person. So what we need to do is insert that into the database. Let's just tidy that up a bit. That goes over here. And what we need to do is pass that into here. So we have a person. There we go. So let's add, whoops, come on, there we go. A parameter here, which is going to be a person, which is like so. Okay, so we have the database and we have the person, and I'm going to just do db insert, passing in the database, the MySQL instance, as well as the person instance that we've got. And what I'm going to do is just go result like that. I'll talk about that in a minute. So this is firing this, which is fine. So we need to do a SQL, and this is where things go wrong, because I get my fields in the wrong order. But what we need to do is insert into person. Now what I'm going to do is just backtick this stuff, and backticking it basically means that you are you're making MySQL realize that is actually a piece of your statement. If you don't, then you might find that you're going to get into deep water, especially with reserved MySQL words. Okay, so if you're using anything like I think it's order, or think of a reserved word keyword, there's a web page on the MySQL documentation all about reserved words. The thing is, and I do know, obviously, that person isn't a reserved word, obviously, but it might be later on. So what you're doing is you're sort of future-proofing yourself just in case. It has actually caught me a cropper once. I was using, I didn't backtick some stuff, and in the next version of MySQL that I had, it just blew up because I was using a field and a field name, I think it was, that was reserved in the new version. Anyway, let's get on. So insert into person, and we need to have a open bracket here, and then values, and then another open bracket here. The stuff in the first bracket will be the field names, and then the stuff in the second bracket will be the actual record that we that will map to each of these field names. Let me just double check a couple of things. That all looks fine. So to make this, because this is going to get super long, super long, what I try and do is just break things up. So we have SQL, and we're going to just concat that like so, okay? And we're going to then do that and concat that again. So this is the closing stuff. So anything in here, anything sort of in here will be the fields, and then values. And then what we can do is close that up to SQL. This will all make sense, I promise, soon. It looks really untidy at the moment, but believe you me, this will make your life so much easier. That needs to be SQL to just simply to read things. Okay, so we've got two spaces for fields. We got one space here for fields, one space here for the values. And if we were to implement or add more than one value, then you would have, you know, what do you call it, a comma, and then you would have another set, and so forth. Okay, and then obviously we need to close that off. So we're just going to do SQL like so, because that's the end of the SQL statement. Okay, so that's fine. That's just complaining that it hasn't been used yet. That's no problem. So the next thing we need to do is issue a list of field names, and what we can do is just go back to here. I'm literally just going to, on describe, copy that, or copy this, just to, you know, because often the problem I find is the spelling of stuff just goes crazy. So let's just do, that is what we need. And whoops, sorry. Here we go. Right, so we're not going to use the ID, so that's fine. First name is going to be in here. So we're going to do SQL first name, like so, comma, and then the next one is last name, comma, and then the next one after, sorry, hang on, bear with me a minute. My magic mouse is, there we go, right, back in the room. My magic mouse decided to go on a wander. Description here, like that, and then the next one is going to be age, like so, like that. Okay, and what we're going to do, just to make this a little bit more sort of readable, is we don't actually need this line sort of between these two. We will when we deal with the actual code, just to make that readable, but what we can do is just bring that up to here, and then bring that up to here, and then, so we don't need that. There we go. So that's fine. And then the next part is going to be the fields and so forth. So here we've got SQL. Oops. we need to have the first name. Now we've got the person, so person get first name. Now for anyone who knows what I'm doing, they will probably be screaming out saying, "This isn't sanitized." I'll talk about that in a minute. Person, last name, and of course, what we do need to do is SQL concat that like that. So there we go. That's the first name done. They all obviously have a because they're strings, quotes like that, and that is going to be the next SQL. You see what I mean by it's starting to be a little bit more readable? Well, I hope so. On each line, it doesn't, you know, you're not coding for speed here. You're coding for readability. So and I'll just copy that. Oops, copy. There we go. Oops, nope, too far. There we go. Right, and then what I can do now is just start. So we've got first name, last name. We've got description. We've got age. So set description, set age like that. Excellent. Okay, so then that then creates, and we don't need to have that. That's fine. So before I do anything, what I'll do is I'll just print this out so it's in one string so you can see it. In fact, I'll probably just do that now. Let's do an echo of SQL. Okay, just make sure that's running. Okay, so that's going to do that. So let's just echo that out and see what we've got. So let's go back to the browser. Refresh. Okay, so we got an uncaught too few arguments to function set. I've been calling them set, not get. What a fool. Of course. Yes. That is get. That is get. That is get. You guys saw that and you were waiting for that failure. So right, okay, so I'll just check the check that again. There we go. So that is the query that we're going to run. Hello, Slayer Darth. I hope you're well. Cool. Yeah, that sounds good. For most, yeah. Well, as long as it doesn't return an error or an exception. Right, so that's what we've got. We can copy that into just the clipboard here, and we can actually just fire this into the terminal, which is what I'm going to do, because it's always good to have, try and work with very small, tight feedback loops. Feedback loops, I mean, as in, they'll tell you that there is an error before you actually, go too far in the code. So let's just, I've copied that to the clipboard. Let's just run this now. Let's just paste that in. And there we go. We have a query. So now if I was to go up a couple of times, we should have two. Yes, Peter and Roger. Now, obviously, I need to think of something different to actually do when we, push this stuff through the code. So I tell you what, I could demonstrate actually whilst we're at it. Let's just go back to the terminal. Scroll down here where we had this find all. Let's just do that and do a var dump of items. Die. Save that. Go into the browser again. That should now return. Yeah, see what I mean? It's now returned two objects. Okay, that's great. So the next thing, let's go back to the terminal, go back into here. Next thing is to, obviously, let's just comment that out. Continue with this insert script. So to do that, we need to fire this into the as an insert query. And what I'll do, like I've done before with the find all bits and pieces, I'll show you some documentation on that. So let's have a look at, yeah, that'll do. Okay, so this is just W3 schools. This is basically what we've attempted to do. So we have a SQL here, and this is just checking that we have the connection. Sorry, no, this is checking that we've actually inserted the record. So we've done a query, we put that in to here, and then it's just saying that we've got a new record that's successfully added. That's essentially what we're going to do. It's that simple. So let's go back to the code. So here we're just going to do db query, and we're just going to pass that in. And with this, we're going to do if that has worked. In fact, what I like to do, I don't like using functions within control flows like this as statements. So let's assign that to result, because there might be a time when I need to use result at some point. So db query, and then pass in SQL like that, and then we just check for that variable. It also, I think, it also makes it just read better. So that's now going to insert that into the database. Now, because and what I want to do is return just the person again. And the reason why is because I need to do some bits and pieces to the person after I've inserted it. So let's do param. Not param, sorry. Let's do @return. And let's just return the person object. And what I need to do is assign the ID that has automatically been added to that person object, and we do that using this. So person set ID, and what we're setting it to is, I believe, the result. Is it last insert? It's something like that. Insert ID, or is it the DB? I forget. Yeah, insert ID. There we go. So that is going to get the last inserted ID and then set that to the person, which means that we now have the correct ID. Before, when we had the person here, down here, we were instantiating it, we didn't have an ID. And we won't have an ID because the record hasn't been created. But when we get that insert, we're actually setting the ID and then doing that. Now, what I prefer to do is change the order of this. So in fact, if isn't result, so if the result has failed, then what I would like to do is just throw new exception and just do cannot insert person. All right. And that means that I don't need to have any kind of statement on here. So I can remove that, go into here. There we go. I think that personally is a bit cleaner to read as well. So you've got the SQL here, that sort of big concatenated string. You're then passing the SQL into the query. You'll then checking if it actually has a result. So that's true or false. And if it's false, then we throw an exception saying we can't insert the person. If it has ran, then we set the inserted ID, the last ID that was inserted into the database, as the person ID, and then we're returning the person. So I need to do a bit of tidy up here. So @throws, and this is going to be an exception. And what did I, just trying to get the terminology the same. So this is cannot insert record like that. Okay. Excellent. Okay, let's run that and actually see what happens. In fact, what I need to do just to make sure that this, let's do James or Jane. Let's do Jane. Let's do Jane, and she's a tester, and she is a web developer. Yeah, she's a web developer. She is a lead web developer. There we go. Just to make things slightly different. Okay, so let's do that. Run that. So what I'm going to do is just go back to go back to the terminal here. So we've got, as I run that again, we've only got 2 people in here, and once we run this script, once we run this PHP file, we should now have 2. So let's try that now. In fact, what I'm going to do before I do that is go back to here, and let's just do a var dump and die of person of results. Sorry. So result should be, in fact, I can just add that to person. No, result. So that should be the new updated person with Jane and an ID of 3. Okay, save. Go back to the browser and refresh this, and there we go. We have Jane, and can you see the ID has been set here? So we have the ID of 3. Jane is a tester and a lead web developer, and she is 34 years of age. Now, if I go back into the terminal, like so, run that, we should now see that we have this 3rd user in here, which is Jane. Now, obviously, every time I press refresh on here, we're going to get a new record called Jane. I'll just do that now. Let's hit that. That's now gone to 4. Going back into, so I've done that. That's now 4, set to 4. Go back into the terminal, run a select like that, and that is now 4. So because Jane's been added twice, I'm just going to delete that. So delete from person where ID is equal to 4. There we go. Something I will say, I will mention though, if we do select, let's go up, we don't need to do that again, is that if I was to refresh this, like so, I've just refreshed the page, notice that that is now 5. So we've deleted the 4th record, but that is actually 5. This is why we should leave the IDs alone. The IDs should be, if they're auto-incremented, they should be dealt with by the database. I've deleted 4, we've got 5, and to show you that, if we go back to the terminal, like so, and select all from person, we have 1, 2, 3, and then 5. So had we have set that in the loop as 4, that would have broken. That would have failed. And that's because when you delete something, the IDs they always continue. Okay, unless of course you truncate the table, and then you'll reset the IDs, which we're not worried too much about at the moment. So in this case, let's just do another delete of that, because I don't want to have 2 Janes. Delete that and select. Okay, so it's back to what it was. Let's go back to the code. Up here, and so let's just comment that out, because that's going to insert a new record every time. And let's just run that again. Like so. Go back into the browser, refresh, and we should now see we have these 3 objects. Wonderful. So that's basically a very very basic way of inserting records and stuff. What I'm going to do now is just slowly refactor this, make it a little bit more pleasurable to work with, because at the moment it's in this humongous file which is just getting ridiculously long. I've got all sorts of things in here. I've got config stuff, I've got What have I got in here? I've got scroll. Yeah, this is now what, 220 lines of code. We've got config. We've got an entity in here. We've got functions for DB connections and the DB insert and DB find all. It's becoming quite a beast. And in fact, what I want to do is start using some sort of domain, not domain design, but I just want to call things as they are, because at the moment DB find all, well, that, you know, a coder would know that we just have this person table. So in fact, what I want to do is just call that DB person find all, just to give it a little bit more sort of like reasonable name of what it's trying to achieve. And again, with here, DB insert should be DB person insert, like so, person insert, like so. But what I want to do is start breaking this up a little bit. Let's just save that. I'm going to need to go back to the very small, stuff. So just bear with me a mo. Exit presentation mode, and also bring me back to the active tools. So restore Windows. That should now, yeah, we've now got this. So we have this file called database.php, which is this humongous file. All right. So nobody's going to know to run that. Go, oh yeah, that's where it all is. So what we need to do is start creating some basic structure in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is move out the config. So we're just going to have a config folder in here, config, and that config is just going to have a PHP file. And we're just going to call that config.php. That's all we're going to do. So yes, I want that to be in Git. That's fine. And the config is going to have just these constants. So we're going to copy that, put that into here. Oops, sorry. Control Z, Control V, there we go. Excellent, let's remove that, save that file. And then same with the person thing. The person is pretty, I tell you what, let's just do one thing at a time rather than just shotgunning everything all over the place. So we've got this DB connect thing here where we're passing in the constants. Obviously we need to require the constants, so I'm going to do require require once, and that is going to be config, and it's config.config. That's fine. So now we have that required, and also with the entity here, we can do a new folder, and I'm just going to do model because it's kind of like a model there, I suppose. And we're going to do a new class, which is person. We're not going to worry too much about namespaces at the moment. And we're going to copy all of that, bring that down into model, into person, into here, like so. Just tidy that up. There we go. And then, so in database, we now need to require model person.php, like so. Okay, so now we've got these functions that actually do things. Okay, so we have person find all and we have person insert. So I guess what we can do is, like with the model, we can actually create, I guess in the doctrine way of thinking, these would be classed as repositories. So I'm not going to call them repositories. I think I'm just going to call them model model repo. There we go, model repo, that'll do. And it's just going to be like that. I guess I could create these as classes, but I'm not going to worry too much. I don't want to overcomplicate this, you see. I just want this to be a very basic basic thing. And there's I guess there's no need for these to be in classes. So we're just going to do person repo, and we're going to keep consistency. So we've got, yeah, that's fine. It's not a class. Classes need to be uppercased. That's fine. Yep, I'll put that into Git. And that's the person repo. Okay, that's making things a little bit more easier to read now. So we are also going to require, once the model repo / person repo, like that. And then what we've got is some logic here to DB connect. So these aren't the DB connection really. If I was to have a different model, it really shouldn't be in the person repo. So it kind of needs to be in its own little sort of world. You could argue that it goes into the config or something about the config, because that's actually making the connection. So I guess what I could do in here, I could just do another file and just call that DB connect. And in here, we're going to just remove that into DB connect, like so. And then in database again, we do a require once of config. Oops. DB connect, that's fine. And because I'm requiring all of these things, I can access them. So I can still access DB connect. I can still access this, but this needs to be DB person find all instead. And that needs to be, let's change that. That needs to be DB person insert, like so. Let's just, again, comment that out. Excellent. And that is the person, like so. Okay, now because we've got the connection here, let's just bring that up the top. In DB connect, we could argue that all we need to do is require DB connect, and if DB connected required the config, then that would mean that we don't need to have that DB connection here. I don't think there's going to be any more data configuration, so we can just go ahead and do that. So here we do require config, like so, and that means that in here we can remove that. Or it could be the other way around. The config requires DB config, but whatever. So let's just make sure that that still works. So we're just we've commented this out, so this is just going to hopefully return all of the stuff. Let's go back into the browser, which is that tab, refresh, and yeah, that's good. That's all changed. So let's go back into the code. So what I want to do is actually rename this, because database doesn't actually justify what it's actually doing. So I guess you could class these as almost controllers, in the sense that if you were to think of it from a model view controller, we've already defined our model. We've defined how we're going to access the model. This is kind of a controller in the sense that we wish to do something with all of these items. And what I'm going to do is just spit out a table of stuff in HTML. Excuse me. So I'm just thinking as I'm going. Bear with me, guys. Just thinking how the best way to do this. Yeah, let's... This is the danger with this is it's starting to turn into my own little framework, and one could then argue is, well, why don't you just use other frameworks? Let's go back into the presentation mode and have a little think. So that makes the connection. One could argue that that could be in DB Connect. I'm kind of we don't need to worry about that, because that's actually creating a new thing. All right, I think I've decided what I need to do. Let's go back to exit presentation mode. I need to adjust some bits and pieces again. Let's bring back those windows. So what I'm going to do is we're just going to call this as, we're just going to rename that. So we're going to do, where is it? Refactor, rename. I'm going to call that list, all right, because it's a list. And that's fine. And I'm also going to create a new one. So I'm going to copy that and go new file, new PHP file, and I'm going to call that insert.php. Hopefully you can kind of understand what I'm trying to get to here. So insert PHP has all of that as well. Now, because I've duped myself here, I mean, to be honest, we only need, because of insert, we don't need this stuff. You could argue that we could just require one file that does all of this stuff. Now, if this was in Composer, if this was in classes, then yes, I could use an autoloader and so forth. But again, I don't want to overcomplicate this stuff. We've got the list, which is just going to do a list like that. So that's fine. So we have insert and list. Now, the next thing I could do, we've got config, dbconfig is config. That requires config list. So I'm just thinking as I go. No, I don't need to see that. I'm gonna just continue with this, I think, for now. So we have the list. I just want to get this out the way. I don't want to have db connect into this file. I could trying not to use a framework at this point with like Silex or something, which is I could just create some front views. Oh, it's only what, 11 lines of code. That's fine. Right, so let's start spitting out some stuff. So let's go to, just going to grab a drink. With the list, what I need to do is list out all of this stuff in a table. So we could break that. So we could break that out of here. So we have an array of items. And in fact, we're just going to call that array of result, because result has results. And what we need to do is just do a HTML file, very basic file, and that's just going to have a very simple table. So it's just going to be for argument's sake, let's just have a head with a title, and this is just going to be list of people, or list of person records, like so, with an S. Whoops, nope. With an S. With an S, Pete. Come on, that's a D. That's an S. And we're just going to have a body. Everyone likes a body. Move that to here. And in this body, we're just going to have a table. Fat fingers. And in here, we're going to have a T head. And in the T head, we're going to have a TR. And in the TR, we're going to have a TD. TH even, sorry. And the table head row thing, we don't need to do that. We're going to start with ID. And we're going to have ID. We're going to have, first name, last name, what was it? Description and age. So that's first name. last name, description, and age, like so. And we're going to have another tr, which is going to print the stuff. Now we need to ensure that we actually have stuff, to print out. So we're going to go back into the old PHP, and we're going to do if result. Now that's going to return an array where the first one is num rows, like that. If num rows is greater than 0, then do stuff, right? Else we're going to print out a row which just says no items to show. Okay, so we're going to break out of PHP, break into PHP at this point. Come on. There we go. I've just realized this is tiny. I need to adjust the screen. Sorry, guys. Apologies. Let's go back to, where am I? View, enter full screen. No, that's not what I wanted to do. That is not what I wanted to do at all. View, enter presentation mode. There we go. So essentially what I've done is a very sort of cheap and easy way of just printing stuff out. So we've got you could kind of class this as a view layer here, I suppose. That should be t head, like that. So if num rows is greater than 0, then do something. If it's not, then do something else. So what we're going to do is a tr, and we're just going to work on this one at the moment. So in here, td, like that, and we're going to have just cannot find any records, and or just no records to show or something. No records found. That's probably a better thing of saying that, which is good. And obviously that's going to return just one cell, but we actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So we need to do a if I can get my cursor in the right place, col span of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, col span of 5. So that's going to basically, if you think of it like in Excel, where you merge the cells together to make one massive cell, you're basically doing that. You're spanning this over 5 columns. Okay, so what we need to do is loop through the array, because what we've got is items is equal to, what I need to do is bring that back into here. So it's items is equal to results, or results. And we need to do a for each. Come on. For each items. I guess what we could do is just do, we'll do items. But we could have just done results. Items as item. Or as, what we can do is as person. And a nice little trick that I do often is do a doc block here. So var, and its person is a person, which means that my IDE now knows what that should be. So I've done a for each, so now I can do a come out of PHP, and we're going to have to go back into PHP. And here is a tr. So this is all looking very messy. I do appreciate that. And the first one is the ID. So here it's go back into PHP, echo person, get. Make sure these are getters this time, not setters, otherwise it'll break. like that. So that's the person. That is good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that's get person. That is get first name. This is get last name. This is get something or other, description. And finally, we get the age. Get the age. There we go. Okay, save. Whoopsie. Save. Just going to fix those. Otherwise, that will complain, or at least it'll make my OCD twitch if we don't do that. Okay, so that's good. So basically, we have this table here. This is the table head, which means then that's fine. Table head here closes up here. And we have the table T body portion of the table, which is this ginormous piece here. And we're basically saying if we have more than, if we've got the num rows is greater than 0, then we do run this, else we run that, which is just a no records found bit. And here we're spitting out, we're looping through each item. So items is results, and we've got we're saying that this person is the person class, which it is person object, which means my ID can then pick up what things should be, and then we're just printing that out per column. So let's let's save that. Go back to here. My throat is dying. Now, what we did change was we changed, before I break everything in one fell sweep, is what we did change is if I go back into presentation, no, come out of presentation mode, I should say, restore the windows. Here we have list. So I've done this in the list. This is done in list.php. So if we go back to the browser then, and go back to list and change that from database, because that no longer exists, and go back to list.php, we have an else. Unexpected else, else in, okay, line 46. Let's see if I can sort that out quickly. Line 46. I'm just going to bring that back into the old presentation mode, just to make things a little bit viewable so you can see what I'm doing. So there's an else that is here we go. If else, then we got for each here. There isn't anything that's flagged up on my IDE as a problem. The error that we had was parse error, syntax unexpected else. Okay, so PHP, closing PHP. That we don't need that, to be honest. That is a for each. That's fine. Else. That looks fine to me. If result. Usually my IDE will pick up a problem, although not saying that you should rely on your IDE to pick up problems. But online. Bear with me a minute. Bear with me a minute. What is the problem? What is the problem? I tell you what. To make this. To just check these things as I go, I should have done that, is to, let's just do a die of that and pass in result num rows, just to see that we've got that out. Oh, I think I know what's wrong. I think I know what's wrong, because this is not a, of course, it's not an HTML file, is it? It's a PHP file. Although I should have this set to be running off of PHP. Let's just, unless I need to just echo all of this. Oh, I don't want to do that. seriously don't want to do that. Let's just bear with me a mo. So that's now on line 60, unexpected, end of file. Yeah, I think what I'm going to need to do is, let's just remove all of that for a minute. Just put that in the clipboard, save that, refresh this. I think what I'm going to need to do is adjust how this is running, because of course this is a PHP file instead of a HTML file, and I don't think I've set up my the local host, the environment, to actually see that as correct, which is a shame. So let's just tidy some bits up as I'm working in it at the moment. Let's just bring this down to make it a little bit more readable. So we're going to just tab that out and remove that. I guess I mean, you could use with this. You could do just an if block with a like so, and then you do end if under here. So end if like that. That's kind of more readable in when you've got a doc block like that. But yeah. So that is now, and then for each, and then here we have end for each, like so, and then here we have else, like that, which kind of makes it a little bit more readable. So we got for each, and then because then you don't have these curly braces all over the place. Okay, so let's just bear with me a mo. Bear with me a minute. Sorry, guys. I need to have some hold music whilst I think about stuff before I say it. Okay, let's try that now, because I've just gone and tidied this up, so we're not using braces, and I've fixed some other bits and pieces in here. So let's save that. This is now dying, so that should return, I think, 3. We've got 3 results in here. So let's do that. Actually, what I'll do is let's just get rid of that. And let's just refresh the page. I'll just go back to the browser, and yeah. So here we go. Apologies for that, but we now have the table with the users. So that's the first name, that's the last name. We've got description and age. I'm going to tidy this up a little bit because it looks a bit, it doesn't look great. So let's do, in the tutorial again, this table could have a width of, if I can spell it, that'd be great. Width with a D, width of 100%, just to make things a little bit more readable. And we're also going to have a cell padding of 10, just to make things a little bit more better. And we're going to save that, and we're going to go back into the browser, refresh that page, and there we go. So it's a little bit more readable, I guess. So we've got that, which is good. And I think what I'm going to do later on is probably make this a little bit more better with some CSS. But I'm not going to talk about that too much. I've gone for about 2 hours. I think I'm in a good place at the moment. So I think I'm going to call it a day at the moment, and then I'll probably continue this in another stream. I know we haven't touched on the insert, so I might be dealing with that later. So what I would like to have is a form, like a little button on here that you click it, and then that goes to a form that you can submit and so forth. So that's what I wanted to cover today, just the list of data. Thanks ever so much, everyone, for watching. I do apologize for all the ums and the ahs and all the thinking as I work, but thanks ever so much for being a part of it. I will speak to you all again next time. Happy coding, everyone. Cheers. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.